EM Weekly starting right now, bringing emergency managers from around the world together to learn, share and collaborate.
Welcome to the EM Weekly Show. This is your host, Todd DeVoe, and with me we have Dan Scott. And Dan,
Morning.
Today our guest had to not come because of some conflicts that occurred, and that's the life of doing business and whatnot. But doesn't preclude us from having this great conversation that we're going to have. And Dan, do you ever, in your emergency management career, have you ever partnered with the private industry at all?
I have, and there's been times where I've been part of it, been part of the private industry, reaching out to the public industry to partner with them.
Absolutely. So today we're going to be talking about private-public partnerships, and what does that mean, and realistically, how effective and efficient private-public partnerships can really be. And whether it's contractors, whether it's debris removal, whether it's water, whether it's food, all these different things that happen during an event that as a entity we might not be able to provide for ourselves, and or it's more cost effective to go outside of your organization to be able to get these things done. So Dan, what's your experience been with the whole concept of private-public partnerships?
Well, it's not just the idea of the working when there's an incident. It's the idea of continual relationship building, partnership, in building in conjunction with writing our plans, the way we do exercises, the way we do our training, just the regular meetings, having people from the outside of your organization participate in your emergency management planning meetings, and be a member of your emergency management team for writing your plans, but also participating in writing their plans and how they do their training, how they do, and how you can plan for the future. As far as I work for a private university, and I work very close with the local emergency manager. I worked in their office as a volunteer, and they were on our emergency management team, and we planned accordingly how the university itself could aid in staging for if there was ever a large incident. Could we potentially provide housing because we had on campus housing? These are all things that we work through, and being a part and actually working through these things in conjunction with each other continuously. When things really go down, it makes it so much easier. As we've said many times, you hear in emergency management, last place you want to be getting to know someone is in the middle of an emergency situation.
Do not trade your business cards over the trunk of a car. That's for sure. That's the mantra. So I mean, one of the things that I've done with my students is I have them go through an exercise, and the idea is there's been an earthquake, wherever they live, and what resources are available for them to use, and having them look. And a lot of them on their own come very quickly with the idea of using resources around them. And well, matter of fact, in this case, I put them in Anaheim when the earthquake occurs, right? And so they go into the idea of using Disney, the Angels, the Ducks, other hotels that are in the area, since it's a touristy area, to help out with that stuff. And so I think naturally, and this is before we prompt them, right? This is sort of like the first experience they get. So this is before we even prompt them that there's the possibilities, and the students are already looking outside the proverbial box of who can help us out. So I think it's actually the idea of public-private partnerships, specifically in emergency management, is a natural cause. Now, that being said, I mean, we rely every day, I say every day, but a lot on the American Red Cross specifically for sheltering, right? So, I mean, we partner with them automatically. So it's already one of those private-public partnerships, although some people don't think of NGOs as being private, but they are. It's a private entity. So it seems to be a natural fit. But why do you see, in some cases, some friction between the idea of going with with private entities during disaster?
I think most of it's a misconception of what they offer. I mean, you see a lot of them are nonprofit, even though they're private. Some of them are for profit. So you get that concept as well, and you see that they could potentially be taking advantage of the situation, but that's not always the case. The American Red Cross, for instance, they have shelters, and as you said, but they in turn return and start building partnerships with those where they're going to set up shelters. So that, that's one of the benefits of working with the Red Cross, especially when it comes to sheltering, is they've pre-established those shelters. They've in many cases they've already got their equipment there, so they can set up a shelter pretty quickly in the event of if one needed it. But they've already built those relationships. They may not continually maintain that, but they do the work for you in that aspect of it. So that's one of the benefits of working with those. Also with others that come from all over the country, being nonprofit and being local. Some of them may not even be local, but they're coming to help you from the outside. And it's just an additional resource that you may be able to utilize in that situation.
Absolutely. And you see this in EMS, emergency medical services, a lot, right? Where you have the fire department who is responding to the calls, but you have private ambulance providers doing transportation. You have the private ambulance helicopters. Mercy Air, for instance, is one that comes to mind. Life Flight, I guess, is another, where they actually are private and they come and they help out with those assists. Rural Metro, for instance, a huge private entity with firefighting capabilities as well. You have the private fire departments that come out and help out with wildland fires. So that concept is there a lot, and it's utilized in various different aspects of things. Matter of fact, Harvard Business Review talks about P3, which is private public partnerships, right? So it's easier to say that than private public partnerships. So P3, but and it's also built upon relationships. I think that is one of the things that we do well in emergency management is we coordinate and build relationships, and to build relationships with your local businesses, I think is critical. And I think of this way, we do not have, I say in the public side, we don't have a great logistics program necessarily. Some cities may, but the vast majority, as politicians like to say, the vast majority, they do not have logistics. So working with Walmarts and Targets and other organizations, FedEx, things like this for logistical aspects, they'll come in and help during disasters. UPS, for instance, they all come in during disasters and help out with moving equipment here and there, especially if you're moving stuff from one side of the state to the other. So the logistical support, food, Target, for instance, when I was working in local government, we had a great relationship with Target. And if we had an issue, they'd come and drop off cases and cases of water and other sources like that, food sources, local restaurants that would provide food services and things like this. You see in some of these hurricane areas where the restaurants that are still functioning, they'll open the doors and start cooking all their food because if they can, because of power outage, and they don't want to waste the food. So, start doing food services. So all those things are really interesting in the public-private partnerships.
And what's good about it too is, what's important about it, I should say, is knowing about these things beforehand and establishing. Home Depot and Lowe's and they have great programs that aid in those situations. They also have in lots of cases they have local grants or particular preparedness initiatives that they will allow for an organization to be able to come in and utilize some type of grant for preparedness equipment or for stocking up supplies. In Home Depot and Lowe's, or any other home goods store really are going to be great for being able to give equipment and supplies and water and tools. And there's even resources, even in people, so to help do these things. And knowing those up front, knowing those, like Walmart has a grant for local jurisdictions that if you apply for emergency preparedness, that's a good thing to know that they have, but also know what they usually keep in inventory. These are good things to have in your mind, especially when you're doing your planning and your training, And when something happens, these are the people you're going to reach out to. So having those individuals, not just knowing, oh well, Walmart, I'll go to Walmart. Who at Walmart are you going to go talk to? Who's in charge of that? Who have you built that relationship with them in your local jurisdiction? That's important. Who do I need to talk to? Or, it's easy to say, oh, I'm just going to go to Walmart. Well, Walmart's going to be busy. Like, do you have that contact, that person that that relationship that you've built, that you call them up and say, we got this, and we need this, and they can say, okay, we can help you. Versus, well, I'm going to walk in the store and try and get help. That doesn't work. This goes to not getting to know each other during an incident. It's getting to know each other before.
Yeah, absolutely. And my relationship that I had with Target was that way. I knew the store safety manager that was over there. Had his phone number, in my cell phone. So if something happened, I could give him a call. Pretty much, 24/7, we can get a hold of those guys over there, and to be able to get resources. So Nick asked a question about the idea of private partnerships that might exist around text messages, images, and video analysis. I don't know about the analysis part, Nick, but I do know that there are organizations out there. I can mention like DLAN, for instance, Vyochi. They all do that type of work as well. And then of course, using I'll talk about our sponsor, Titan HST, with mass notification systems, using text, video, using email, all those services specifically to be able to do mass notification and situational awareness, right? Using that software to be able to have people go downrange, take video and send it back to your EOC. Using those services like that are critical in the idea of running a smooth response. And I think it's interesting too, when I would go with technology here, because Nick kind of put me down that rabbit hole for a minute. When you're a small jurisdiction, specifically we'll talk about in Southern California, when the disaster occurs, for the most part, the news media is going to be over, like, say, the larger cities. LA City, for instance, is going to be one. So getting real air coverage, unless you have a lot of money for your city and you don't have your own helicopter, getting that footage from the disaster area in your city back to your EOC, it becomes difficult. And it used to be we would go out and have maybe some video footage taken, and then we bring it back to the emergency operations center and kind of take a look at it. Then we started doing, you see, FaceTime, things like this. But having a system where it can go across platforms, whether you're on iPhone or whether you're on an Android phone, being able to go across, that's really important. It's critical to get that information down and be able to send a team out there to do assessments and stuff like this. So getting information back into the EOC is really important. And I think using your public-private partnerships like Titan HST, for instance, is critical to be able to do the job in an effective manner. What do you think of that, Dan?
Well, no, I absolutely agree, and I think ultimately too, the rising number of jurisdictions that are utilizing drones specifically for that reason. They're purchasing the quality equipped drones to be able to deploy those in and after emergency situations, to get more situational awareness of the extent of damage, and how far things go, and if there are people trapped. All these things are being utilized through technology today, and the jurisdictions that are taking advantage of that are definitely ahead of the curve. But also there's the aspect of those affordability. There's jurisdictions that just can't afford that type of thing, and it makes that even more important to establish those partnerships with jurisdictions who can, so that when something happens in your jurisdiction, you can rely on another jurisdiction to come in and help you with those resources. But technology is definitely we're using it now, and we're going to use it. We're going to use it even more in the future.
I remember in 2005-ish, going back a little bit that time, that there was this article or ad. I remember that, like, that big magazine that would come out with all, like, the resources for public agencies. It's like a really big. It's like, yeah. Anyway, and we're flipping through that, and there was a drone that you'd buy, and you actually had to have a guy, like an operator, almost like a remote control airplane, and it was huge. And it would come take apart, and you put it into this big box and put it in the back of your car. It was a huge drone. And the reason why I bring that up is technology is so easy. I bought a drone with the video capabilities for my son just to goof around with, and it fits in the size of your palm of your hand, and he's able to fly it around, and you can look at the stuff that's going on your cell phone, and it's just amazing. And I mean, you could get that was like it was less than $100, and then we're looking at some drones that are like around $800 that have all the capabilities that you need. And again, it fits in the palm of your hand, and it's not this huge. You don't need to have your under. Producer Brian will know the number. I think it's like 49 grams, something like that. Brian, is that what it is? You can something like that you can actually fly without a license.
Yeah, I'm not sure the weight, but I know the new DJI Mini is 1 gram under that weight.
Yeah, I want to say it's like 149 is what that DJI Mini weighs. So yeah, Michael,
if you get the more licensing and credentials you have to operate them.
Right, and that's the thing. Like if you get that 149 and it has video, it's HD video, and it shows you everything that you need to see, and it's you're able to do that. You don't need to have. But speaking of public-private partnerships, there are drone operators out there for hire. We're gonna go to break real quick here, but I want to address Michael his comment. He says plus contracting costs are reimbursable, not just over time, if reasonable and federal declaration is made, or California proclamation. Absolutely, that's the advantage too. And we've seen with this whole COVID response that your regular staff is being burnt out, days after days, hours after hours of being in the EOC and operational, and bringing in some contracted people is key. All right, everybody, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, let's talk about how we operate our EOC with contractors. The Outer Limits Supply Company was founded on the idea of providing high-quality first aid kits. Their goal is to supply the life-saving equipment you'll need to mitigate the majority of medical or traumatic injuries often seen during austere conditions. Whether it is when you are on the outdoor adventure or your team is responding to a major crisis, the Outer Limits Supply Company provides practical, user-friendly first aid and trauma kits that anyone can use. If you enter EM Weekly at checkout, you'll receive 20% off your purchase. So go to www.outerlimitsupply.com today.
Seconds count during an emergency. That's why at Titan HST, we're always inventing new technology to help people stay safe and help people who can provide help get connected with people who need help. At Titan HST, we've deployed mesh networking, allowing emergency communication even when networks are down, augmented reality, and real-time translation. We believe in the power of people to help each other stay safe and thrive.
Are you looking for that bag to help you keep organized as you travel around, something you can carry with you every day? Well, VanQuest was founded with a simple mission: build the toughest bags and packs for you to carry every day and to help you stay organized and prepared. VanQuest has been making the ultra-durable bags and packs since 2011, and their bags and packs are trusted by the clients such as the FBI, U.S. Secret Service, and U.S. SOCOM. That's the U.S. Special Operations Command. Their bags and packs offer the best organization for the user-friendly experience. It's a high visibility interior for users. I'll tell you something, I love that orange inside the bag because I can find the things I need. I love my VanQuest bag. Don't forget, they offer free shipping, 100-day return guarantee, lifetime warranty, and if you put in EM Weekly, all caps, all one word, you get 10% off your total purchase.
Welcome back from that quick break, and thank you for listening to our sponsors. And yeah, go check them out. And with VanQuest and with Outer Limits Supply, you put the EM Weekly all capitals in there, and you get 20% off. I mean, that's a good deal. And I mean, that's more than it's more than just your tax off there. You also save on shipping and everything. So, man, that's 20% off. Daniel, you should utilize that discount code.
I appreciate that. I'll take that into consideration.
So I have a friend of mine who I won't say which city it is because I didn't ask him to talk about this. But anyway, he's a emergency manager for a local jurisdiction, LA County, and he actually started manning his or staffing. Sorry, started staffing his EOC with volunteers, and when I say volunteers through from Team Rubicon, and with contractors, because he didn't have, number one, he didn't have enough trained members of his city, because it's a smaller city, to be able to work through the EOC. And then he didn't have he couldn't do just in time training necessarily. So it is a special aptitude and attitude that you have to be to work inside that. So do you see, and I think, using the context of COVID, do you see more emergency management programs utilizing contractors to fill critical roles in the emergency operations centers?
Well, I mean, as you just said, that's kind of already being done, and we've kind of broached the subject before as far as utilizing contractors for filling certain roles or writing plans, or helping a jurisdiction through as we continue on through the response and recovery of COVID. So yeah, I believe contractors can be utilized at very well and done properly at a very low cost. It's the long term. That, and it's always, when it comes to the contracting aspect, for me, it's the long term. What are we going to do long term? We can't always be short sighted and directing what's right in front of us. We have to be thinking long term, and filling a role or writing a plan with the contractor who's going to maintain it, who's going to pick up it and pick up that ball and run with it and continue running with it and continue training and continue implementing a program once the contractor leaves. That's the issue. Utilizing a contractor is great. Now, contractors can do wonderful things for an organization, especially volunteers. But the training aspect is what's important there as well.
Well, that being said, I mean, if you take a look at your executive leadership at most organizations, or most cities, I should say, you probably have about a 5-year. I mean, it depends, right? I mean, I'm looking at averages. You probably have like a 5-year stint of where they're going to be there, which is your fire chief, your police chief, your directors of public works, and stuff like that. Whether they move around from smaller cities to bigger cities or just retire out, you don't normally see a huge longevity in those roles. Various different reasons why. So that means like at least every few years, or maybe even like every year, I guess, because you got to have refreshers and continuous training with those members of the organization. Now, that being said, right, using this as the one side of it, on the other side, if we use contractors, assuming that they are going to have freshly trained or continuously trained members working for them, which is not necessarily true, but this is an assumption I'm making here. Do you get a more effective response by utilizing contractors that way?
I don't believe so personally. I mean, I feel like you get more ownership of a program when they're brought into the fold versus a contractor who knows they're only there a short time. That's an important aspect for me is having a vision that's longer than the end of the contract. Who's going to that having that ownership of the program that you are establishing, and basically a legacy that you're leaving behind, whether it's for 2 years or 5 years, knowing that someone else can come in and pick it up without having to start all over again.
Now, I've seen contractors who have long-term contracts with jurisdictions, and it's almost like they're a member of the staff. When it comes to that, they're just not being paid for by the city directly. Saving money back on the back end, I suppose, of the retirement and benefits and stuff like this. So it's funny because like I've ran into people who've been, like I said, long-term contractors with people, and then you don't even realize that they're not necessarily, employed directly by the city. I always find that.
Well, that's the difference. As a long-term contractor, there are positions all over in the government as well that is considered a contracted position, but it's more. If you look at the position itself, it's contracted because of where it's funded from, but the position itself is long-term. It's not a short-term contract. And a lot of these things that are being, especially if you look at things that are being done right now, they're more short-term because they're being done during COVID and they're responding to COVID. It's what happens after COVID. It happens after after this initial response that I look to. A lot of these positions that are being funded by funding that's coming from the government, and when that funding runs out, odds are the position runs out, and this the short-sightedness of that bothers me.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you that grant positions when you're taking, but for just a little tip for you guys out there looking for jobs, take a look at what the funding source is. If it says grant funding or limited 1 year contract or 1 year position, stuff like that, those normally means it's grant funded. So if you're going to take that job, just take that with understanding that your job might be, you're probably not long in the tooth to be there for that particular position.
Yeah, there's a special person that takes on contractor roles. I mean, they're usually those are more established, and they're on in they've had a lot of experience. They're retired out usually, and they have more experience. They have more flexibility in their time. They have more flexibility to say, I can do a year, I can do 2 years, versus no, I need a steady income that I know that I can plant my feet and establish a career. Those, so it is the individual that decides what jobs they're going to go for, what contracting positions they're going to go for, or what grant funding they want to implement.
Yeah, but it's not just the idea of the steady income, because you can get paid well during doing contract work, but it's just the idea sometimes of
Consistency.
Well, yeah, that and laying down roots and things like this, but that's another story. So going back over to the public-private partnerships, right? Since talking about contractors and stuff, we talked about. Sounds like we're talking all about roses. That happens, right? It's all roses and milk and honey, right? When you do contractors, no, there's some issues, right? And those are the things that when you do a contract that you have to really be aware of. Set those ground rules and the expectations early. Make sure that everybody on both sides of that contract has a understanding. I was laughing one time when we're talking about Home Depot, for instance. It's a true story with Home Depot. So I was working for this guy, and he goes, "Okay, what we have to do is we have to get favored nation status with Home Depot." And what he basically wanted to do is have a contract or a PO basically saying that as soon as something happens, that we're first in line, right? And we're first in line. We're going to be in there, and they're, when we need generators, they're not going to sell generators to other people except for us first. And I'm like, I don't think it really works that way, because if you think about this, if we're gonna have that favored nation status, how many other jurisdictions are going to be knocking on the Home Depot for that same status? So there still is a little bit of the first come first serve that comes in with that type of stuff. Understanding your debris removal contractors, they might be county-wide, and doesn't mean that they're going to get to you first. So understand that there's still going to be some issues, specifically with like a contractor who has multiple contracts within the same region. And that's why when we talk about contractor going to the EOC, it gets a little bit difficult because, if Dan Scott is contracted with 3 cities, what city gets him, and so that's always an issue as well when you take a look at contracts. So make sure that you sit down and you put those parameters out there, what your expectations are, what they could actually deliver. Make sure it's on that contract because it's very, very, very important to do that. Otherwise, you're going to get burnt at the end. What do you think of that, Dan?
Well, I think that's a very important aspect of it as well. I mean, if you have a contracted service that has contracted out to every organization in the area, which let's say assisted living homes for the elderly, and you got ambulance services, and ambulance services are contracting with these, but it's all the same ambulance service. It only has so many ambulances. Well, they've overextended themselves, and you don't realize that when you're making these contracts. And when it comes down to it, then the service itself is not there. So making sure that the services and how extended those services are, and how likely it is going to be if a whole jurisdiction. It's easy to, if one area is affected, but if you got a whole jurisdiction that is affected, which happens quite often, how realistic is it that service is going to be there?
Well, we're coming here close to the end here of our show here, but I want to leave everybody with this. When you're looking at you're getting your contractor and you're starting to look at prices, right? Just because it's the cheapest priced doesn't mean it's the best. You're going to get the best, probably even less than the best services. So I think that you should take a look at what services they can provide, how long they've been around, how big they are specifically. Because, like I said, if Dan Scott as a contractor signs up with 3 different cities, and he's the only guy in his agency or his firm, it's going to be hard for him to be in 3 different EOCs at the same exact time. Dan, I'll let you leave with the final word.
Goodbye. No, I'm just kidding. No, is building those relationships, building those partnerships is an important aspect of being an emergency manager, and in being in any response capability or planning capability, building those partnerships, those relationships, those trainings, and the long term aspect of what we do every day. Take the time to build those relationships up front. In the back end, it becomes incredibly hard.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for spending your morning with us. Thank you, Dan, for being here. Producer Brian, love everything that you do for us in the back end. And don't forget to follow us on your favorite podcast player, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, wherever else that you can find us. And see you guys next week, and stay safe and stay hydrated.
Do your sign off.